Hi, I'm Jim Covington for Illinois State Bar Association Statehouse Review. This is our weekly review of what happened in the Statehouse. The General Assembly is adjourned for the summer until mid-October, but they have sent 609 bills to the governor for him to sign, veto, or mandatorily veto over the next 60 days. And I want to give you a quick overview of some of those bills. The first bill that has already been signed into law by Governor Quinn is the workers' comp rewrite. This is an enormous bill, and there's so many things in it, but I just want to touch on a few of the highlights. One of them is the creation of a preferred provider network that sort of qualifies the employee's rights of choice of physicians. For an employee to refuse to go to the employer-directed provider, that counts as his or her choices. There was a reduction in the medical fee schedule of about 30%. It also institutes a requirement that the provider review and use the AMA's guidelines on impairment, along with some other statutory criteria. It creates some other statutory criteria for the commission itself on awarding disability, but it says that no one sole determinant may be the cause of disability. How that's going to play out, nobody knows. Those two differing sets of requirements for the provider and for the commission seem to be a little different, and I suppose they're supposed to be working in concert. The final thing is it also all arbitrators effective July 1 will be terminated. They'll be allowed to finish out their cases and continue serving until they have been replaced. All future arbitrators must be attorneys, although current ones may be grandfathered in. Many of these changes are effective September 1 of 2011. The second bill I want to talk to you about is the transfer on death instrument. All across the country there's a number of emphasis to try to do non-probate transfers on death. The AMA, the American Bar Association, has in fact adopted the Uniform Law Commission transfer on death instrument. Charles Brown of DeKalb, Illinois, drafted with a number of other section councils an Illinois-centric law on this for residential real property only, which would be described as single-family dwellings or 4 units or less, or a single-family residence with 40 acres. It has allowed the transfer of property on the death of the grantor. It has the same requirements to create as the will in terms of credibility of the witnesses and the mental ability of the grantor, him or herself. And that's effective January 1, 2012, if the governor signs it. That's House Bill 1153. The third bill is creation in the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act of a courts witness statute, beefing up that. The courts are now relying on the N. Ray Peterson about when and how they can secure courts witnesses. This creates a statutory criteria, how they're appointed, how they're paid, how those fees are divided, and motions to determine the reasonableness of those fees. And that has been signed into law as Public Act 97-47. And this may be a good time to note that anytime you want to look at the text of these bills or the status, the General Assembly has an excellent website at www.ilga.gov. It's excellent, and I encourage you to go there and check on the status or the text itself. The fourth bill is another big bill that is arising from the conflict between the federal law, the No Civil Contact, the Illinois Domestic Violence Act, and the Stalking Act, where we have students in trouble at schools and administrators and courts kind of bump into each other. And there's a lot to it, from what I can kind of gather, that courts and administrators that communicate seem to work through these problems. Courts and administrators, for whatever reason, don't communicate, have difficulty. This was an effort by Representative Roger Eddy to kind of create some structure. He also has in the bill that is on the governor's desk, all these bills are on the governor's desk, that you cannot hold a school district or an employee in contempt. A court may not, unless that court has been allowed to intervene or has intervened. The next bill I want to talk to you about is House Bill 83, which I think is a really neat little bill that was sponsored by the Juvenile Justice Initiative of Illinois, that puts into place best practices of some of the local circuit judges are doing in juvenile court on creating a decision-making tree on when and how to incarcerate a delinquent youth. St. Clair County was one of the counties they looked at that does this right, and they sort of made a statutory criteria of how to do that with the proviso that the court is supposed to make every effort to find the least restrictive alternative to incarceration. Incarceration is the last resort, not the default or the first or the easy one. That's House Bill 83. FOIA has been trimmed back a little bit. As you recall, a year ago, there was a major rewrite of the Freedom of Information Act. The units of local government have complained with some justification on a lot of things. One of them is the frequent flyers, the commercial requesters, and so there now is a separate little procedure for what they call the recurrent requesters. If you do in a 12-month period more than 50 requests a year, or more than 15 in a 30-day period, or 7 in a 7-day period, you're put in a different category of how those are responded to and the cost of those. And it was an effort to sort of minimize some of the units of local government constant headaches with frequent flyers. The last bill I'm going to talk to you about, and that was House Bill 1716. The last bill I want to talk to you about is Senate Bill 152, in which property damage subrogation claims under $2,500 now must be arbitrated under the nationwide intercompany arbitration agreement rules. This was sort of a dispute among the insurance carriers themselves on how to deal with the smaller property damage claims. Those must be arbitrated under that unless both parties agree. And we will see you next week. Thank you.